Hi, and welcome back to the History Hut. I'm Jim. This is Dr. K, and we're talking science in India. What can you tell me about medicine?
Okay, well, medicine. As with the Islamic world, lots and lots of interesting things. Of course, yoga, really important from a very, very early period. That becomes part of it. But for medicine, the two oldest surviving texts are the Charaka Samhita and the Sushruta Samhita, and they may be as old as about the 2nd century AD, but they may in fact be even older than that. It's hard to tell. They're just mentioned by other people after that period. And, just fabulous. The Charaka is 120 chapters long in 8 sections, and it covers 8 branches of knowledge. So everything from therapeutic medicine to mental illness to tonics and drugs, surgery, infant disorders, toxicology, sensory organ disorders, sexual vitality, all those kinds of things. So really quite an amazing book. And the other one that's often mentioned is this other, the Sushruta. And it has 6 sections, and it's mostly about surgery. So it discusses things like cauterizing wounds and sewing up wounds and draining fluids from wounds. So really, really precise. And I believe that each of them has an illustrated section where they have illustrations of the surgical instruments that they're using. So these really lovely steel instruments, and you can actually still see them when you're in places like Delhi. If you go to little medical museums, they come in big hardwood boxes, and you slide open the top, and all these different instruments are in there. And of course, they did things as the Islamic scientists did as well, like cataract surgery. So you get all those kinds of things. So the second one, the Sushruta, has 121 different instruments, from knives to scissors and things, all made with metal, and an explanation of how to make them and then what they're exactly used for. And most of it, some of it covers doctors' training, but most of it has to do with actual surgery. And this is very interesting because in the West, people who considered themselves to be doctors didn't do surgery. That was kind of beneath them. That was the thing that barber surgeons did, and doctors were the kind of theoretical guys. But in the Islamic world and in India, the surgery is kind of hands-on. So the most famous of the doctors do all of that. And Fa Shen, again, discusses the description of Indian hospitals in the Charaka, and talks about what an ideal hospital should look like. And so we have really interesting discussions of what the building should look like. And I just love the best is the people that you have to hire, what kind of people you should hire. And of course, it's people that have some medical skill, but even the people that are nurses, and they just call them attendants, even they have to be able to sing and dance and recite as well as look after people. So you have to have kind of this, like a kind of musical
naturally.
Glee or something, so that you can keep people happy while you're actually kind of looking at after them as well. So a well-constructed hospital, hiring good staff that can cook and clean, look after you and dance for you, and that'll feed patients well. And they talk about the kind of food that you have to have in the hospital, just like absolutely from every single angle. And it gives the list of equipment that a good hospital needs, and everything from bolsters and pillows and, just absolutely everything, all the equipment for the kitchen. And then, of course, the wide variety of medicines that you would have to have as well for people that need to be purged, that need to throw up, and people that need to be calmed down. And so really, really very interesting. And the other thing I find quite interesting is that they do plastic surgery, and the most common one is rhinoplasty, known in the West as the nose job.
Oh, yes.
But not just because people thought, oh, geez, my nose is too turned up. I don't really like that. I want a nicer nose. Not like that at all. It's because if you were a thief and if you were thieving and you were caught, your nose was cut off. So what they would do, he would try then, everybody would know that you were a thief. So they would cut a triangle from the skin of your forehead and then peel it down over the front of your face, and then put 2 bamboo poles that were hollow there, and then put the skin over it and kind of rebuild a nose for you.
Is that where the got your nose thing came from?
Yeah. Oh, it could well be.
You little thief.
That's right. That's right. So that's what they would do. Because people were cremated, children not so much, but grown-ups definitely, they didn't have any bodies to work on for anatomy. So anatomy still thought people had more bones than they actually have, because babies' bones haven't fused or even wee kids' bones haven't fused. So a bit loose on anatomy. They did cataract surgery. Quite interesting. And they also did C-sections if the mother was in danger of dying during childbirth. So the old cesarean section that we don't actually see in the West until the 1500s is being done at this period in India. They also have great intellectual debates, and I think this is all to do with the religion as well, on where we come from and how things were created. And a really good education system that's really available only to the top caste, to the Brahmins. You could go to an ashram, you could go to a Buddhist or a Jain monastery and get an education there. And these are really long-term teacher-pupil relations that might last for about 10 years. So if you wanted to become a Buddhist monk, it might be a 10-year process. And you would start off with just oral lessons, and then literacy would come later, and then you would spend a lot of time recopying older texts. And they took in students, of course, from China as well, because lots of Chinese Buddhists who would have been, on the path trying to find out more about Buddhist texts. So if you received an education, you were Brahmin, you're in this era, you'd receive an education in maths and astronomy and verse and metaphysics, a really, really good education as well. And of course, the monasteries would have excellent libraries, and so it's just like real great centers of learning. And kings would sometimes, or rulers would sometimes, grant the rents from an entire village to a Buddhist monastery so that it could support itself and take in more students. So, also, and I think you learn medicine as well, or you could learn medicine as well when you were at the monasteries. So,
never mind all that though. What happens?
Right.
Yeah, never mind all that.
Oh, just wait till you need cataract surgery, and I'll be like, yeah, never mind all that.
But what happens when the Huns weaken the Gupta?
Oh, back to politics. Oh,
probably all that goes to.
It'd probably be a bit harder then. After the Huns, remember I told you that they managed to push them back by about 570, but terribly weakened state after that, and you have really a breakup of empire. So that whole Gupta empire that controlled the north breaks up into at least 4 different kingdoms. So you get 4 different kingdoms in the north, and then out of that, one man from one group comes to dominate, and they're called the Pushayabutis, and their leader is Harsha. That's an easy name to remember, Harsha. Harsha, and he rules from 606 to 647, and we know about him because there are a number of written sources. It's always helpful. It's a travel log of another Chinese Buddhist called Xuanzang, who talks about what life was like in Harsha's kingdom. And Harsha's friend, it's always good to have a friend who'll write your biography, because you'll get kind of a nice one, right? They're not going to say anything mean about you. You're like, yeah, that's my true, good buddy Jim here, I'm never going to say anything terrible about him. So we have the work of his friend who writes a biography of him. And also Harsha seems to be a bit of an intellectual and writes at least 3 plays by himself, all by himself, So we have the work of the man himself, and he's in touch with his contemporary ruler in Tang, China. And this seems to be, after Xuanzang goes home, he maintains that contact. So they're actually emissaries, political and religious emissaries, move between the Tang court in China and Harsha's kingdom. So you have a very strong connection between the Chinese emperor and this ruler of North India. So really interesting guy, but the problem is that he leaves no heir, and so after his death, you go back to what you'd probably had in the pre-Gupta period, which is thinking of India in terms of maybe 70 kingdoms. So everybody is just a free-for-all, and then everybody just rules in their own area. And after that, the problem is really the Islamic invasions that begin. So after Harsha, you got all these other little small states in the north, and they soon find themselves under pressure from Turkic people, Arabs, the Chinese and even the Tibetans who are having a kind of run at that time and run right into the north of India. So the Chinese are involved in North Indian politics and with Kashmir, still a trouble spot to this day. The Tibetans become more assertive along the Himalayan borders, so they're active in the area. There are Arabs present in Western India, but they're there for trade routes, not for territory, and this is pre the Prophet. And then you have Turkic people looking at North India as well. And the Turkic peoples are Islamic. So it's not like just Turks, it's Islamicized people. And so when the Islamic forces, when I talk about Islamic forces, doesn't necessarily mean that they're coming from Mecca. It means they're coming from these Turkic regions through Afghanistan, through the Khyber Pass. And when the Islamic forces arrive, it's a series of attacks, very harsh, very intolerant. They thought, of course, that Hindus were idolaters because they thought that Hindu people worshipped many gods, and of course that would just be not the right thing at all. So no sympathy or tolerance for Hinduism. So the first real dynasty, the first real new dynasty comes out of Ghazni, a little area in Afghanistan. It starts off in the late 900s, and it starts off with raids on Hindu temples, so just kind of hit and run across the border, taking the temples apart, taking all the gold out, going back. And then they become increasingly interested, when they see how rich this area is, they become increasingly interested in the trade possibilities there too. And the guy to watch is a guy called Mahmud of Ghazni, and he attacks northern India 17 times and manages to actually extend his control quite far through the continent. Lots of bloodshed. He's incredibly well prepared, excellent Islamic armies, great techniques, fast horses, heavier armor than the Indian soldiers were wearing, but lighter equipment overall. Just it has absolutely everything going for him. And these highly mobile armies and no supply line problems whatsoever, because they can always get soldiers and horses from Afghanistan. And he's known as the Sword of Islam. So Mahmud of Ghazni, the Sword of Islam. There is lots of opposition from the Rajput princes of the north, but they just can't match the Ghazni cavalry. And of course you have Indian war elephants on the one side and incredibly fast horses on the other side, so it's not really much of a contest. So that's in the 10th century, and the next set of attacks come in the 12th century, and nobody's any better prepared in the 12th century than they had been before. Just all those worries about the northern border, but not really able to do much about it. And the next guy is Muhammad Ghuri. And he also comes from a line of Turkic rulers, Islamic rulers, from the capital of Gur, G-H-U-R. That's the name is Ghuri, G-H-U-R-I. It's just west of Ghazni, and he enters India looking for a kingdom, not just for raiding, and has all of the local rulers recognize him and in fact annexes the Punjab as well. He's assassinated in 1206, but his followers stay on, so his army stays on. And then the last group, this is over a period of about 300 years, they call their kingdom the Delhi Sultanate. And they are again a Turkic Afghan group who start in 1206, and they dominate all the way to 1526, when they're replaced by another Afghani Islamic guy called Babur, who has relatives on both sides going all the way back to Genghis Khan. And so he's called, his dynasty is called the Mughal dynasty, and that's the Persian word for Mongol. So you have like the Delhi Sultanate actually lasts for a couple of hundred years, but it is full of problems because they, again, totally intolerant of the Hindu population, which is about 100 million, and you can't convert them all to Islam. They don't want to be converted either. And so they just are treated like second-class citizens. They have to pay really heavy taxes. They're not allowed to be in the army. They're not allowed to have horses. They're not allowed to be armed. They're not allowed to take part in kind of daily political life. The Islamic rulers, there's a number of them, the Tughlaqs and then the Lodis, but they're all kind of under this title, the Delhi Sultanate. But there's all sorts of rebellions against him, just very, very harsh. And that's why it's so easy for Babur to come in. But the Mughal dynasty that he creates is different. It lasts until the British kind of dismantle it in about 1857, but much different. And he actually makes a point of marrying Hindu princesses and doing the kind of things that the Gupta had done, you know, kind of bringing people back into the body politic. So lots of hard times ahead after the Gupta period, and especially with the Islamic invasions. So it's all about Afghanistan and the Turkic Islamic invaders from Afghanistan. After trouble in the north.
Trouble in the north.
Yeah.
And with that, we'll bring an end to our discussion of the political history of India.
Absolutely.
Join us next time.